Plant FAQs. Australian tree fern. Cyathea cooperi. Sphaeropteris cooperi. Sphaeropteris cooperi. Frequently asked questions. Hi, I'm Fern, and I'm here to answer your questions about Australian tree fern, a truly unique and fascinating plant. Cyathea cooperi, a synonym of Sphaeropteris cooperi, is an epiphytic fern native to tropical rainforests in Queensland, Australia. It's known for its unusual, spherical fronds that resemble green buttons. What are the unique characteristics of Sphaeropteris cooperi? Button-shaped fronds. The most striking feature of Australian tree fern is its round, button-shaped fronds. These fronds are green, fleshy, and covered in tiny hairs. They store water, allowing the fern to survive in drier periods. Epiphytic growth. Unlike most ferns that grow in soil, Sphaeropteris cooperi is epiphytic. This means it grows on other plants, using them for support but not deriving nutrients from them. In the wild, it's commonly found on tree branches and trunks. Slow growth. Sphaeropteris cooperi is a slow-growing fern. It may take several years for it to reach a mature size of 6 to 8 inches, 15 to 20 centimeters, in diameter. I've always found the Australian tree fern's fronds to be more delicate and lush, but the hapuu fern has a rugged charm that makes it feel more resilient and rooted in nature. Australian tree fern versus Tasmanian tree fern. The Australian tree fern offers a tropical aesthetic that's hard to beat, while the Tasmanian tree fern's denser, more structured look gives my garden a distinctive and stately feel. How fast do Australian tree ferns grow? Australian tree ferns, like many ferns, are relatively slow-growing plants. In ideal conditions, they can grow up to 1 to 2 feet per year, with growth rates influenced by factors such as light, temperature, humidity, and soil conditions. How to care for Australian tree fern. Caring for Australian tree ferns involves providing the right conditions. Light. Prefers filtered or indirect light. Avoid direct sunlight, especially during the hottest part of the day. Watering. Keep the soil consistently moist but not waterlogged. Provide adequate drainage to prevent water stagnation. Humidity. Requires high humidity levels. Mist the foliage regularly or use a humidity tray to maintain moisture levels. Temperature. Thrives in warm temperatures between 60 degrees Fahrenheit to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, 15 degrees Celsius to 27 degrees Celsius. Protect from cold drafts and temperature extremes. Soil. Plant in well-draining, acidic soil with plenty of organic matter. Fertilizing. Feed with a balanced liquid fertilizer diluted to half strength every 2 to 4 weeks during the growing season. Pruning. Remove dead or damaged fronds as needed to maintain the plant's appearance and health. Where to buy Australian tree fern? Australian tree ferns can be purchased from nurseries, garden centers, or online plant retailers that specialize in ferns and tropical plants. How to propagate Australian tree ferns. Australian tree ferns can be propagated from spores or by division. Spores are collected from mature fronds and sown onto a suitable growing medium, while division involves separating the plant into smaller sections, each with roots attached. Is my Australian tree fern dead? Signs of a dead Australian tree fern include brown and withered fronds, mushy or rotten stems, and lack of new growth. However, it's essential to perform a scratch test on the stems to confirm whether the plant is still alive. Are Australian tree ferns deer-resistant? Australian tree ferns are not typically considered deer-resistant and may be susceptible to damage if deer are present in the area. Are Australian tree ferns poisonous to cats? Australian tree ferns are not listed as toxic to cats. However, it's always a good idea to monitor pets around plants and seek veterinary assistance if ingestion is suspected. Are Australian tree ferns poisonous to dogs? Australian tree ferns are not known to be toxic to dogs. However, as with cats, it's advisable to keep an eye on pets and contact a veterinarian if any unusual symptoms occur after ingestion. Are coffee grounds good for Australian tree ferns? Coffee grounds can be beneficial for Australian tree ferns as they help improve soil acidity and add organic matter. However, they should be used in moderation to avoid over-acidification of the soil. Does Australian tree ferns like lime? Australian tree ferns prefer acidic soil conditions and may not thrive in soil that is too alkaline. Adding lime to the soil can increase alkalinity, which may not be suitable for these ferns. How do Australian tree ferns reproduce? Australian tree ferns reproduce through spores, which develop on the undersides of mature fronds. These spores can be collected and sown onto a suitable growing medium to propagate new plants. How do I water Australian tree fern? Water Australian tree ferns thoroughly, ensuring that the soil remains consistently moist but not waterlogged. Watering frequency may vary depending on environmental conditions, so it's essential to monitor soil moisture levels regularly. How to grow Australian tree ferns indoors? To grow Australian tree ferns indoors, provide bright, indirect light, high humidity levels, and consistent moisture. Choose a well-draining potting mix and maintain a warm, stable temperature. How to prune an Australian tree fern? Pruning an Australian tree fern involves removing dead or damaged fronds to maintain the plant's appearance and health. Use clean, sharp pruning shears and make cuts close to the base of the frond. What fertilizer for Australian tree fern? Australian tree ferns benefit from a balanced liquid fertilizer diluted to half strength, applied every 2 to 4 weeks during the growing season. Choose a fertilizer specifically formulated for ferns or use a general-purpose houseplant fertilizer.